Hello, today we are going to go over the study guide for our Chapter 0 review. So I've got the square root of negative 27. I'm just going to do a factor tree on that. 3 times 9, 3 and 3. They need to go in pairs, but only one is going to make it out. So I'm going to take that 3 out. There's a negative sign underneath the radical, so that's going to be an I. That 3 doesn't have anybody to join up with, so it's going to stay. The square root of negative 36 is just going to be 6i. And then for 162, let's do a factor tree on that again. That'll be 2 times 81. Well, that's kind of nice because that's a perfect square right there. So that'll be 9 times 9. So that's going to be 9i radical 2. And on the last one, that has to be in groups of 4. Let's do a factor tree. 2 times 64. 2 times 32. 2 times 16. 2 times 8. 2 times 4. And 2 times 2. And again, they need to go in groups of 4. Only one is going to make it out. Right here I have 3's, 2's. So 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. On number 2, we're going to have to solve. You can't factor that because it's not the difference of two squares, so I'm going to subtract 25 and you get x squared equals negative 25. Then if you took the square root of both sides, you're going to get plus or minus 5i. Because we are solving, you need to do the plus or minus. On B, you can do that two ways. That's a difference of two squares, so you can factor it. Or you can just use the square roots. Add 9 to both sides. Take the square root. And you get x equals 3. And I just said don't forget the plus or minus, and I almost forgot my plus or minus. There's no I on that because there's no negative under the square root. C, you're going to subtract 25 from both sides. Divide by 4. Take the square root. And you get x equals plus or minus 5 over 2. And let's not forget our I because we had a negative underneath that radical. Take the square root of the top over the square root of the bottom. All right, well, we know that the square root of negative 1 equals I. I squared is negative 1. On I cubed, if I thought of that as I squared times I, that would be negative 1 times I, which would be negative I. I to the 4th is 1, because I could think of that as I squared times I squared, which would be negative 1 times negative 1, which gives me the positive 1. I to the 5th would be I to the 4th times I, which would be 1 times I, or just I. And if you start doing this, they start repeating themselves. So if you had a big one, and I think we did this in one of my classes, of 230, I to the 230, I to the 4th is a pretty easy one. So I'm going to almost think of it as a power of a power. Well, what number? 4 times what number gives me close to 230? Well, that would be division. So if I put that in there, so that'd be 5. Goes in there 7 times. It's the remainder of 2. So that would be I to the fourth. Let's move that over just a tad. Times 57. And then my remainder was 2. That'd be 1 to the 57 times negative 1. Not I, that would be 1, sorry. 1 to the 57 is just 1. 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. Axis of symmetry. X equals negative b over 2a. The trick on this first one, a is 1, b is 0. So when you do that, you get x equals 0 over 2, which is 0. So my axis of symmetry is x equals 0. You plug that back in to get your y coordinate, and we can do this in our head. 0 squared plus 25 is 25. On letter B, x is going to be opposite b over 2 times a. Sorry, that's 4. Let's try that one more time. I'm still thinking 2 times 2. Opposite b, negative 16 over 2 times 4. Now I get to write my 2 down. It's negative 2. And that gives me my x coordinate of my vertex. So here, 4 times negative 2 squared minus 4 times negative, where's that 4 coming from? I will tell you guys, it's the end of the day. I'm starting to get tired, making bonehead mistakes. So let's fix this. 16 times negative 2 plus 25. All right, need to work a little bit more carefully here. That's going to be negative 2 squared is 4. 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times negative 2 is a negative 32. Plus 25. Combine your like terms, start left to right, that's negative 16 plus 25. I'm going to get 9. So there's my axis of symmetry, x equals negative 2. My vertex is negative 2, comma 9. All right, on this one, oops, I need to solve. I'm going to try factoring on this one. And I'll use guess and check. 2x squared would give me 2x times x. That'll be 3 and 1. If I were to check that, that's going to give me negative 1. Negative 6. Oh, that's not going to work because if I add up, it gives me negative 7. I'm looking for negative 5. So let's try switching those around. Three there, 1 there. Check that, and that gives me negative 3x. I don't think I wrote my x's down last time. That gives me negative 2x. Add them together, and this time it does equal negative 5x, so I've got my factoring correct. And if I could not have factored that, I would have used the quadratic formula, and we'll do that on the next one. You take each one of those then, set it equal to 0, and solve. You get x equals 3 over 2, and here you're going to get x equals 1. So the next one, let's use the quadratic formula, opposite b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4a c all over 2a. Simplify what's underneath that radical, and you get 25 minus 12. That's a 5. 25 minus 12 is 13. And I'm not going to be able to do anything else to that because 13 cannot be simplified. I can tell you right now, C doesn't factor. There's no numbers that multiply to 1 that add to -1, so we're going to use our quadratic formula. Opposite B, plus or minus square root b squared minus 4a c all over 2a. Well, that's going to be 1 minus 4, which means -3. I don't want to leave a negative underneath the radical, so that'd be 1 plus or minus I radical 3 all over 2. On number 6, anything to the 0 power is 1. On this one, you needed to realize that 0.4 is the same thing as 2/5. So 5 goes there. And if you took that 3 squared and you wrote it as 9, that's even better. On 8, 25 to the 1/2 is 5. That's the same thing as the square root of 25 times 6 times 6. And that's going to equal 180. Number 9 is a system of equations. I'm thinking substitution is the way I'm going to go. So I'm going to take that x minus 12 and I'm going to plug it in for y right there. Oops, I covered up the 3 a little. Sorry about that. And I get x minus 3. And right there's where the y would go. But instead of y, I'm going to put x minus 12. Distribute. Negative 2x. I'm going to kind of combine a couple steps. Combine my like terms, subtract 36. Divide by -2. X is going to equal 12. You put that back in, 12 minus 12, and you get y equals 0. Write that as an ordered pair, 0, 12. Do the same thing here. This time, though, I'm going to use elimination. As my variables are lined up over each other, my y's cancel, and I end up getting 4x equals 16, or x equals 4. If I plug that back into the next equation, the bottom one, take out the x, put in 4, you get y equals 0. So there, my ordered pair is 4, 0. C has got 3 variables. I look at this middle one, though, and realize right away that that's going to be easy to solve because I get b equals 11. You just add 4 to both sides. And then I came up to the top equation. A plus 11 equals 7. A is -4. Now I've got 2 things. I got -4 plus 11 plus C equals 7. So then you combine your like terms and you get 7 plus C equals 7, or C equals 0. Now you're going to go ahead and write those in ordered pairs, or I'm sorry, in an ordered triple. -4, 11, 0. Circle that. And somebody just came to my door, so I'm going to hit pause for just a second.